Hello, welcome to the EPG Pathshala program in Linguistics. I am Pramod Pandey, Center for Linguistics, Jawaharlal Nehru University. Today we will discuss Module 19. It is entitled Phonemic Analysis. The paper is Introduction to Phonetics and Phonology. In this paper we will be concerned with two things. One, with the principles of phonemic analysis, as the topic suggests, and also along with it the notion of phonological rules and how to state them. The two principles of phonemic analysis, namely contrastive distribution and complementary distribution, owe their origin to the notion of paradigmatic and syntagmatic relationships between sounds, as proposed by Ferdinand de Saussure. Paradigmatic relationships can be understood with help of examples such as pit, bit, pit, bet, pit, pet, pin, pen, etc. Now, if we substitute the first sound in pit by another sound such as ba, we get two different words. Then we say that pa and ba are in paradigmatic relationship. Similarly, the sound e in pit can be substituted by the sound a. In that case, then we get two different words, namely pit and pet. If ta is substituted by another sound, namely na, then we get another word, namely pin. This way, the relationship between pa and ba, or between e and a, or between pit and pin, the ta and na, are established on the basis of the paradigmatic relationship, as we say. Syntagmatic relationship can be seen with the help of examples such as pit or bit or pin. Now, what we notice is that the vowel e occurs commonly in all these three words. Now, the difference is that in the first two words, pit and bit, the vowel is e. And in the word pin, the vowel is e. We distinguish between them saying that the vowel in pit and bit is an oral e vowel, and the vowel in pin is a nasal e vowel. Now, the nasal vowel in pin is assumed to result from the occurrence of the sound na by its side, following sound. The relationship between e and na is the syntagmatic relation. Thus, we have these two types of relationships, paradigmatic relationships and syntagmatic relationships, which are used as the basis for defining these principles of phonemic analysis. We now turn to the principle of contrastive distribution. So we now turn to the principles of phonemic analysis. There are three main principles of phonemic analysis, namely principle of contrastive distribution, principle of complementary distribution, and principle of free variation. There is a fourth principle as well, namely principle of pattern congruity, but that principle is more of a heuristic device which helps us in carrying out phonemic analysis than a principle which helps us analyze speech sounds and arrive at conclusions about them. We are thus concerned mainly with those three principles. We will now turn to the principle of contrastive distribution. The principle of contrastive distribution is stated as follows. If two sounds when two sounds X and Y occur in identical environments and the substitution of one with another brings about a change in meaning, then the two sounds in question are said to be in contrastive distribution. Sounds which are in contrastive distribution are phonemes in a language. That is how we use the principle of contrastive distribution. We know what the principle is and we know what conclusion to draw from the application of these principles. Now let's take a look at how the principle works. We have the examples here, sink and zinc. When we look at the environment, the context for sir and zer, we find it is identical. There is a word boundary before the two sounds, and there is identical sequence of sounds after them, namely ink. Now if we substitute one of the sounds in place of the other, that is, let us say sir in place of zer and vice versa, then the meaning of the word changes, which means that the two sounds are in contrastive distribution, identical environments and change of meaning, and then the two sounds are phonemes. This is how the principle of contrastive distribution works. The best and the easiest way to find two sounds in contrastive distribution is in minimal pairs. A minimal pair is a pair of words that differs minimally, as the term suggests. We saw that sink and zinc are a minimal pair because between sink and zinc the only point of difference is between sir and zer, and everything else is the same. No sound before and ink afterwards. We thus find that the best way to look for contrastive distribution is through minimal pairs. Now try to find minimal pairs for other sounds in English and in your own languages. In finding minimal pairs, although the easiest environment and the most commonly environment found is the beginning of words, but that's not the only one. We can establish two sounds through contrastive distribution by looking at the environments in the middle of a word or at the end of a word. For example, in the two words buses and buzzes, we get the contrast between sir and zer in the middle of words. And in the words peace and peas, we get the contrast between sir and zer at the end of words. Now any one of these pairs can help us establish two sounds as phonemes. A minimal pair such as peace and peas, because the words are different, they have different meanings. If we substitute sir with zer or zer with sir, we have two different words. So this pair in itself is sufficient to establish the fact that sir and zer are phonemes in the language. Similarly, buses and buzzes, we have the difference, there are two different words. One is a noun, plural, buses, and the other is a verb, buzzes. So any of these contexts, that is word initial, word medial, word final, is sufficient to establish two sounds as phonemes. In practice, however, we try to look for the environments in all these contexts, such as beginning, middle, and end. We have another set of pairs for the sounds m and n occurring in all the three environments, such as mock and knock, simmer and sinner, seem and seen. Now in all these contexts, in mock and knock, m and n contrast word initially, simmer, sinner, m and n contrast in the middle, and seem and seen, m and n contrast in the end. M and n are thus phonemes in the language. Sometimes in some languages, especially languages that are endangered or languages which have a very small population, it is not always easy to find sounds in minimal pairs. We then have to be satisfied sometimes with near minimal pairs. Now, what are near minimal pairs? As we saw, a minimal pair is a pair of words that differs minimally. A near minimal pair is a pair of words that differs in more than one feature. For example, if we take in English the words pin and ben, these are not minimal pairs certainly, because there is more than one point of difference between them, namely that between p and b and between e and a. So thus pin and ben are near minimal pairs. In languages such as English, where minimal pairs are very easy to find, near minimal pairs do not serve any function, any purpose. It is only in those languages where minimal pairs are difficult to find that we have to be contented with near minimal pairs. An example here of a near minimal pairs in a language is a language such as Kheza, for example. Now if you look at the words in Kheza, we have these words, two words, one meli, which means heart, and the other mele, means plank. Kheza is a tonal language. The last vowels are different in tone. In the word heart, the tone is a high tone, and in the word plank, the tone is a mid tone. In order to establish E and A as phonemes, we may sometimes find such a word, a near minimal pair, as useful. Thus, meli and mele are a subminimal pair. Take a look at the pairs of words from Kheza and try to find those pairs which are minimal and those which are subminimal. I'll give you a cue here that the first pair of words is a minimal pair that helps us establish k and ch as the phonemes in a language. K means to take out food from a dish, and che means to tease. Find out which other pair is a minimal pair and which pairs are subminimal pairs in Kheza. You next have an exercise from Nepali. You have a large list of words, about 32 of them. Go through them and try to establish the phonemes of Nepali on the basis of minimal pairs in these words. I'll give you an example that will help you to analyze the data. For example, the first word, pir, meaning anxiety. When you go through the data, you find that it contrasts with the word number 11, namely pir, which means turn on. So pir, anxiety, pir, turn on are minimal pairs, and they help us establish that p and p are phonemes in the language. Now, how do we go about the whole exercise of establishing the phonemes of a language? The steps we take are the following. First, we start with the first word and note the sounds that are found in these words. All the sounds are expected to be new. Thus, in the word for anxiety, pir, you have three sounds, p, e, and r. You list them. Then you go to the second word. There you note not all the sounds, but those sounds which are new. Thus, r is an old sound. Already that has appeared in the first word. It's not necessary to repeat it. But bh and a are new sounds. So we include them in the list. And that way we continue. Tal, in the word tal, the third word, the sound that is repeated is a, but the sounds th and l are new, so we add th and l to the list. This way we progress to complete the list. Once the list is completed, then we find that we can organize the list smoothly for carrying out phonemic analysis. Thus we put vowels, all the vowel sounds together, and we put all the consonant sounds together. The reason for this is that there is no need to look for contrastive distribution between a vowel and a consonant. It is already assumed that they must be phonemes. There is no question of they not being phonemes, not being different from each other. It is only amongst the vowels and among the consonants that we may suspect the sounds to be phonemes or not phonemes. We thus group them together, and after that we again group them into smaller groups. For example, we will put p and p, b and bh, t and th, d and dh, and then consider these to be possible cases for phonemic analysis. Once we have put them together, then we look for contrastive distribution and for establishing the sounds in question as phonemes. Now to the principle of complementary distribution. This is the one which is more difficult to understand, and not only that, which is more difficult to apply. We will see how. The principle is stated as follows. When two phonetically similar sounds, say X and Y, occur in mutually exclusive environments, that is, where one occurs, the other does not, and vice versa, and the substitution of one with the other does not bring about a change in meaning, then the sounds in question are in complementary distribution, we say. That is, they do not occur in identical environments, they always occur in mutually exclusive environments. They are phonetically similar. The conclusion to be drawn from the principle is that when two sounds are found in complementary distribution, then they are allophones of a phoneme. The examples of allophones of a phoneme can be found in English as given in the table on the screen. In the table before you, we have three different phonetically similar varieties of L, the alveolar lateral L in English. One which is known as a clear L, given in columns A and B. The second, which is a voiceless L, is given in column C. And the third, called a dark L or a velarized L, namely O, is given in the column D. Let us see how these sounds are in complementary distribution. Note the environments in which these sounds occur. In column A and B, for the alveolar L, the clear L, we find the following environments. In column A, all the words, all the L's begin a word. In column B, all the L's occur between two vowels or between a consonant and a vowel. A consonant is different from the consonant that we find in the third column. In the third column of a voiceless L, we also have a voiceless L occurring between a consonant and a vowel. But the difference between the consonants in column B and the consonants in column C is that in column C, all the consonants can be generalized to be voiceless aspirated consonants, p and k. You would expect t to be also there in English. It is not there because we do not get words beginning with t and a l. Had it been there, you would expect that the l, aspirated l, would also occur there. In the final column, for the velarized l, what do you notice? You notice that the velarized l occurs at the end of words or before another consonant. Now, now you try and compare the distribution amongst the three variants. The velarized l occurs at the end of words or before a consonant. The aspirated l always occurs after aspirated voiceless plosives. And the alveolar clear l occurs word initially or between two vowels or between any other consonant and a vowel. Now, amongst all these, what we notice is that there is no common environment shared by them. They are mutually exclusive. That is, where l occurs, h doesn't occur, or o doesn't occur. Similarly, where o occurs, l does not occur, or h doesn't occur, etc. So in all of these cases, the three variants, they are in mutually exclusive environments. Suppose by chance someone, for example, a second language speaker of English, were to use one of these variants in place of the other. For example, instead of o, as in pill, or fill, the speaker were to say pill or fill, the meaning does not change. The substitution of one with the other does not bring about a change in meaning. We then conclude that these sounds are in complementary distribution and that they are allophones of a phone. Now, the question that arises is, of the three sounds, l, and l, that is the clear l, the aspirated l, and the dark l, which of them is the phoneme and which are its allophones? The conclusion to be drawn is that it is the clear alveolar l that is the phoneme, and the aspirated l and the dark l are its allophones, on the simple ground that the aspirated l and the velarized l, they occur in restricted environments, whereas the clear l occurs in a wider environment. This can be attested further by looking at some other data. Thus, we find that in other words too, we have l occurring in other environments. The environments for the aspirated l, and the velarized l remains constant and restricted, whereas for the clear l we may find other environments where it occurs. Thus, in words such as Ridley, block, tablet, slide, flow, we do not find any of the two variants allophones such as an aspirated l or a velarized l occurring. It is the clear l, which means in environments other than those in which the aspirated l and the dark l, the velarized l occur, in all those environments there is a clear l occurring. Thus, the clear alveolar l is the phoneme in the language. Now to the statement of the facts. With regard to the principle of contrastive distribution, the statement is fairly simple. All you need to do is to say that two sounds X and Y occur in contrastive distribution in the following words, minimal pairs, and thus they are phonemes. But with regard to the allophones, through complementary distribution, you have a slightly more logically related statements that have to be made. These are states given on the screen. Thus we begin with the following statements. The aspirated L occurs when preceded by an aspirated voiceless plosive, play, close, etc. The velarized L occurs word finally or when followed by a consonant, for example, feel, building. The clear alveolar L never occurs when preceded by an aspirated voiceless plosive or followed by a consonant or word finally. The aspirated L, the velarized L, and the clear alveolar L are all alveolar lateral consonants and differ from one another in voicing or in being velarized and are thus allophones of a phoneme. L has the least restricted distribution. Therefore, L is the phoneme constituting the allophones H, O, and L itself. That is the first informal statement we make about sounds in complementary distribution. Now the informal statement can be translated into a formal statement. Remember that one of the main concerns in phonology is the statements of rules. And most phonologists are concerned with trying to find how best to state a phonological rule. The notion of phonological rule has evolved over time, and in order to understand how a good phonological rule can be stated, it is necessary to take a look at the different phases of a formal statement of a rule. We look at two types of formal statements translated from the informal statement just noted. Formal statement 1. The formal statement 1 for the allophones of L is as follows. The phoneme L has three allophones. 1. The aspirated L. You have a slash there, which means environment, and you have the environment given there, that is aspirated voiceless plosive preceding. 2. The velarized L and the context in which it occurs, namely either a word boundary or a consonant following it. And number 3, L itself, which occurs in the environment elsewhere. By elsewhere is meant in all other environments. So the way to make the formal statements is you begin with the phoneme, you mention the restricted phonemes, and then you mention the phoneme itself as its own allophone. That is the way formal statement 1 is found used in the literature. We continue with some data from Kheza, the Tibeto-Burman language that we looked at. Here are the data for you and the questions. The questions are the following. State whether the two sounds in question are phonemes or allophones. State the relevant context for them and present the generalizations in the informal format as well as formal format 1. Formal statement 1 assumes that the phoneme is a family of sounds. This was an important notion of the phoneme. held by the British school as well as the American structuralist school. There is an alternative view of the phoneme that has come to have wider acceptability. This is the view of the phoneme as an abstract unit. That is, the phoneme is an abstract unit with its allophones as its concrete realizations. The phoneme thus is not stated in terms of itself as an allophone, but rather is assumed to be there everywhere, and the allophones result as a consequence of the application of phonological rules. We thus have two different conceptions of the phoneme and two different methods of phonemic analysis. The phoneme as a family of sounds. The method of analysis is item and arrangement. The phoneme as an abstract unit with concrete realizations, and the method is item and process. Item and process is the second kind of formal statement that we'll take a look at. Formal statement 2 is stated as follows. The grammar is assumed to have two rules which change a phoneme to its allophones. Thus, there is a rule of devoicing which changes an alveolar lateral l to a voiceless lateral l following aspirated voiceless plosives. And there is a second rule, namely velarization in English, which changes an alveolar l to a velarized l before word boundary or before a consonant. Now, according to the item and process conception, you have a phoneme l and its allophones result from the application of two rules here. These rules have been given the name devoicing and velarization in English. With this, we come to the close of the discussion of the two main principles of phonemic analysis and the way to state the generalizations arrived at by the application of these rules. To summarize the discussion in this module, we looked at two main principles of phonemic analysis, namely the principle of contrastive distribution and the principle of complementary distribution. We also looked at the way in which the generalizations arrived at by the application of these two rules should be stated. We found that they can be stated in the form of an informal statement, which consists of smaller statements logically related to each other, leading to a certain conclusion. The informal statement can be translated into two different types of formal statements. Formal statement 1, which follows the approach of item and arrangement and conceives of sounds as a family of sounds. The allophone and the phoneme together make a family. The item and process approach is exemplified with the formal statement 2 types, in which the phoneme is seen as an abstract unit with concrete realizations by means of phonological rules. So the notion of phonological rules is of critical importance in the item and process approach. In a later module, we will see a further refinement of the formal statement, that will be formal statement 3, in which we will see that there is a better way of stating generalizations about the phoneme and allophone relationship among speech sounds. Thank you.